Thank you. Our next set of questions is on the topic of healthcare. Mike, you're going to go first, and your question. On your website, you say, we must preserve and expand Medicare, the Affordable Care Act, CHIP, and other programs that ensure we can all live healthy, productive lives. Which of those programs would be your first priority to expand, and why?
To me, if I get to choose one, it's Medicare for everyone. To me, we need a baseline of quality health care that everyone can access. I feel like the United States military is a great example of comprehensive social services. If you're in the military, you have access to housing, food, health care, a decent wage. And to me, that should be the baseline for everyone in this country. We are a wealthy enough country where everyone should not want for housing, healthcare. And to me, the healthcare issue is something that crosses all lines, whether you're talking about racial justice, gender justice, the gap between rich and poor, the economy. I mean, you can't be a successful business person if you don't have healthcare or if your workers don't have healthcare. And some people say it's too much of a pie-in-the-sky thing to talk about Medicare for all. But if you want to do some really rough math, we can call that $1 trillion program, $3,000 a year for 300 million people. But that's within reach. And by the way, it won't cost $1 trillion because if we have Medicare for all, we can cut costs in a lot of places, whether it's prescription drug costs, the advertising costs of these HMOs, the profits they take out of the whole system. I mean, really, it's within reach. If we also look at corporate welfare, which in this country exceeds hundreds of billions of dollars a year, the idea that Google, a super successful company with billions in profits, also gets $400 million in tax breaks is obscene. And while some people are basically on the brink of bankruptcy, on the brink of homelessness because they don't have health care. To me, this is a unifying issue. Like I said earlier, Republicans need health care too, independents need health care too. And to me, as Democrats, it's incumbent upon us to put forward a strong demand to show how we're different. The Affordable Care Act was a necessary step. It was what was possible under the Obama administration, but it's up to us now to make a real demand that will bring qualitative change to families across the country. Thank you.
Tawana, on your website, you say, healthcare should be readily accessible to all Americans. The Robert Woods Johnson Foundation estimates Latinos and African Americans experienced 30 to 40% poorer health outcomes than white Americans. As a U.S. representative, how do you intend to improve healthcare access for underserved populations?
Thank you. And this is something that I do know a lot about from my professional experience as a registered nurse educator. Everyone in America, every citizen deserves access to not just health care, but the best health care possible. When our representative gloats about gutting Planned Parenthood, in case many of you are not aware, and the Republican Party tends to use the propaganda that Planned Parenthood is all about abortions, and they use that as a tactic to turn people away from democratic values. Planned Parenthood also, in addition, was the go-to place for a lot of the population, as you just mentioned, African Americans and Latinos, to get reproductive care. And not just for women, but also men. As your United States congressional representative, I will fight for and lead legislation that assures that every American not only has access to health care, but has efficient and effective health care. I have been there advocating as a case manager for people who had to drive at least 40 to 50 minutes away just to get to the nearest hospital. Right now in Bastrop County, the OB-GYN departments have been closed. So those women needing care, women that are carrying children, needing care, are having to drive into Austin in order to get that type of care. As a case manager for the Texas Health Steps program and Pregnant Women and Infants program, I have seen my share of the impact of a lack of health care. And it is very sad to say that as far as the minority populations are concerned, it's even worse for them. So I look forward to fighting for health care for all. Thank you.
Our next topic is gun control. Tawana, first question for you. Since the Douglas High School shooting, public discourse around guns has changed. There's a big difference in how both campaigns addressed gun control on their campaign sites since that shooting. How did the shooting and its aftermath affect your thoughts on gun control?
The aftermath of this most recent, and let me say not most recent shooting, because there are shootings occurring even as I stand here right now, but the most recent school massacre, it just made me even more determined to get into this seat and pass a gun reform legislation that makes sense. It's enough about our representatives saying that they care. You don't care. If you really were concerned about gun control, when the massacre at Sandy Hook occurred, I would have seen my representative going forth. You know who I did see going forth? My two daughters. They were 6 and 8 at the time. They were terrified. They sat in the back seat of my truck and discussed what they can do. At that time, the kids had enough sense to do something. They had their friends to write letters to send to the family members who lost their children. And since then, they started an organization called Kids Care. They're now 12 and 14. And we have been in the community non-stop. Gun reform is a must. It is necessary. I tell every child that is out there to continue to keep your foot on the gas. Everyone who cannot get out there with our young people that are fighting so vehemently, help them, donate to them, encourage them, allow them to stay in your home, because we have some people that have the energy more than we have right now, that are going to go for it. This is the time. If we don't do something now about the need for gun reform, we won't ever do anything. I've met with Christina Woods, and I met with her first over the phone January 27th about the Gun Reform Act of 2018, and included in that reform is an exhaustive and extensive background check, as well as mental health evaluation, as well as a requirement for all firearms to be registered with the ATF, and a total dismantling of military assault weapons in the hands of citizens. Gun reform is very important to me, and what just occurred at Parkland has even made it even more important. So let's all fight together for gun reform.
And Mike, the same question. How did the Parkland shooting and its aftermath affect your thoughts on gun control?
Well, I'd like to echo something that Tawana said, is that, gun violence has been an ongoing problem in this country for a long time. And I would suggest that some of that has to do with the fact that the gun industries are in this country. The people that produce the firearms are in this country, and they have infiltrated the NRA, and they've taken over some of these institutions, and it's all about their profit motive. And it seems like any problem there is with gun violence, the answer is more guns, which is the most absurd thing to me. If there's a shooting at a church, well, we need guns in churches. If there's a shooting at a school, we need guns in schools, and that's obscene to me. To me, this is an issue that I've thought about for a long time. I grew up in Oakland, California, a place that had gun violence. I lost a baseball teammate in high school who was killed by gun violence. And the idea, as a former school teacher, that teachers had to choose between saving their own lives and putting their bodies in front of children is extremely tragic to me and painful to think about. Also having young people, children who are going to grow up in this world, obviously I'm concerned about that issue. What I'm inspired by with the youth movement, the March for Our Lives, and also the fact that they're opening this up to students from Chicago, Baltimore, who confront different types of gun violence, is, to me, there's this new opening. These young people are not jaded. They don't think that the NRA is a permanent power in this country. They're willing to fight back and speak truth to power in ways that some of us might not have been willing to do. And so to me, there's an amazing opportunity to provide a real choice to voters. Just like on the healthcare issue, on the NRA and gun control, we have an incumbent here who gets an A rating from the NRA. At the same time, he's the chairman of the Homeland Security Committee. I would suggest that's a conflict of interest. How can you be for Homeland Security when you vote with the NRA every single time? I received the NRA's ballot questionnaire. It is the most cynical, disturbing document you will ever read. It's a justification for silencers, for bump stocks, for high-capacity magazines. They have a justification for any mechanism to kill human beings that you could imagine, and it's all about their own profits. And so I think we have a real opportunity. We have McCall, who gets the A rating from the NRA. I will get an F rating from the NRA because I threw that questionnaire in the recycling basket. And we can let voters make a real choice. I mean, even people who are military veterans, seasoned hunters, think that background checks, training, even licensing is a reasonable thing. They take pride in their ability to use a gun safely. And so the fact that McCall refuses to vote for even common sense measures like that gives us a chance to really make a big distinction. Thank you.
Our next topic is immigration. The first question is for you, Mike. Michael McCall recently said in a statement, "Sanctuary cities flout our nation's immigration laws by harboring illegal immigrants who have committed dangerous crimes. Elected officials do not get to choose which laws to obey. Rather, it is their duty to enforce them, and it is the federal government's responsibility to secure the border and write the immigration laws." What would you say to people in the 10th Congressional District who agree with him about this?
Well, to be honest, I believe the Republican Party's attack on immigrant families is founded in racism. It's founded in a desire to show their base that they are going to get tough on some imaginary enemy because Mexican immigrants, Central American immigrants, South American immigrants are not a danger to us. These are hardworking families that are in this country. And I find it ironic that the party of family values, as they used to call themselves, is now in favor of breaking up families. That they want to support a travel ban that doesn't allow grandparents to visit their grandchildren. I am in the position of being the lead attorney for the city of Austin, suing the governor about Senate Bill 4, this anti-immigrant law. As part of that case, we challenged the state of Texas. What is the public safety justification for Senate Bill 4, for these anti-immigrant laws? The only thing they could come up with was a killing in San Francisco, where a person was accidentally killed when an undocumented immigrant dropped a gun. They have no proof of danger. In fact, the studies show that undocumented folks commit crimes at a much lower rate than U.S. citizens. So to me, this is the classic divide and conquer. Unfortunately, we have a lot of white working class folks in this country who have been left behind by the American economy. And the Republican elite don't want those workers to look at them because they're the ones that offshored the jobs. They're the one that took all those jobs out of Pennsylvania, Ohio, across the country. And so all these tactics, whether it's attacking immigrants or attacking transgender people who want to use a bathroom, this is all obfuscation. And so to me, there's some of these folks that will look at me, look at my family, and they will never vote for me because I'm in a mixed race family, because of what I stand for. And some of those folks I just can't convince. But some of the other ones I would like to say, let's make a real choice. What is in your actual economic interests? That was one of the good things that Bernie Sanders did in the last election cycle, is this economic message. Who is going to fight for you? Who is going to make your actual conditions better? Building a wall won't help anyone. Reversing those tax cuts will. So thank you.
Tawana, your positions paper says, "I will support the Dreamers and DACA, which protects eligible immigrant youth who came to the United States when they were children from deportation. I will also support a humane path to citizenship for other immigrants, especially those that have been living, working, and contributing to American society for years." What specific steps would you support to help make the path to citizenship more humane?
Thank you. And immigration reform is major, and it is something that we all need to be engaged in. If we do not actively participate in fighting against all of the negatives that are coming from Washington, D.C., we will see something that happens worse. When we talk about immigration reform, in 1924, there was the Immigration Reform Act. And that act was specifically headed by racist Ku Klux Klan in Washington, D.C. The United States president approved of their actions. Their particular request was that only a small percentage of immigrants that were already in the United States, only a sixth of those would be allowed to continue to come from those countries. So yes, this attack on immigrants against children that are a part of the DACA, there was 700 children that benefited from this program. That is all, the root of it is racism and hatred. I promote a clear path to citizenship. I believe that we should put legislation in place that would allow those children that are here, that are already here, to gain citizenship to the United States of America. We are talking about nurses, we're talking about teachers, we're talking about doctors, and what you are seeing, and some of the things we've not seen yet. When I was here a year ago for a town hall meeting put on by Indivisible 10, there was a teacher that stood up that said that they had received a memo from Austin ISD to tell them how to respond when their children came in to say that their parents were taken away. This is inhumane behavior. A clear pathway to citizenship is something that is important, but also we need to fight for protections for sanctuary cities. Our president announced a tax on Syria last week. If they were sincere about the people of Syria, as they are supposed to be sincere about the DACA recipients, then there would not be an attack on sanctuary cities. So immigration reform is something that is important that we all need to put a hand in to protect.